Somewhere on this earth, the Book of Enoch says, there are things walking that were never given anywhere to go. They had bodies once. The bodies were enormous, and they died in the flood, along with everything else that could die. But something walked out of them, and Enoch says it is still here, because heaven was never its home, and the ground where human souls wait was never built to hold it. Their fathers were dealt with. The angels who came down were chained, buried in the valleys of the earth, and given a day when they will be brought out and judged. Their sons were given no chains, no prison, and no day of judgment at all. And it was not because anyone forgave them. Genesis gives this 4 verses and then walks away from it. It says, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and took wives from among them. It says there were giants on the earth in those days. And then it moves on to the flood, without telling us who the sons of God were, where they came from, or what became of the things they produced. The Book of Enoch does not walk away. It spends more than 30 chapters on it. And the part of that story almost nobody tells is not how the giants were born. It is what happened to them afterward, not to their bodies, which the flood accounted for, but to whatever was inside those bodies when the water came. Enoch does not leave that vague. He gives it an address. The address is the earth. Enoch says the spirits that came out of the giants would be called evil spirits upon the earth, and that the earth would be their dwelling. He puts it beside the corresponding rule for everything else. Heavenly spirits dwell in heaven, and spirits born on the earth dwell on the earth. Not a pit, not a prison, not a chamber under a mountain, which, as we will see, is exactly what human souls were given. Here, the same ground. And that raises a question the text takes the rest of the book to answer. Picture that literally for a moment, because Enoch means it literally. Not another realm, not somewhere beneath us, this ground. They pass through the places people pass through, and stand where people stand, leaving no footprint and meeting no wall. Enoch never says they were confined anywhere. He says the earth is their dwelling, and he writes that line the way you would write down a permanent address. So why is that? Their fathers were bound in pits and buried under the valleys of the earth. Their sons were left to walk. Were they driven out of every other place, or was there never a place made for them at all? To answer that, you have to understand that Enoch's universe is not vague about where things go when they die. Enoch is given a tour of it. He describes being shown a mountain with hollow places carved into it, and the spirits of the human dead gathered inside, separated by kind, waiting. It is not offered as a metaphor. It is a location, and he is taken to see it. Heavenly spirits have an address too. Their dwelling is heaven, and Enoch states it as a rule rather than a preference. 2 categories, 2 destinations, a complete system closed before the events of this story ever began. Now we need the giants inside that system, which means going back to how they got there. 200 of them came down. Enoch dates it, the days of a man named Jared, and locates it, the summit of Mount Hermon. Their leader was Semyaza, and Semyaza was afraid, not of God, not yet. He was afraid that when the punishment came, he would carry it alone. So before anything else happened, he made all 200 swear an oath binding themselves to each other, so that whatever came would come to all of them together. There is something buried in those 2 names that most retellings pass over. Jared is built on a Hebrew root meaning to go down. Hermon sits close to a root meaning a curse, a ban, a binding oath. The descent and the oath are written into the date and the place before a single thing happens. Then Enoch does what Genesis never does. He names them. Around 20 leaders, each with 10 beneath him. Arakil, Kokabiel, Barakijal, Ramiel, Danel, Azazel. They took wives. The women bore children. The children were giants. When God speaks to Enoch about the Watchers, the charge is not simply that they took wives. It is that they crossed a line inside their own nature to do it. They were spirits. They were immortal. They had no need to reproduce at all, because nothing that cannot die requires children in order to continue. That is the accusation, that they defiled themselves by behaving like creatures of earth when they were not creatures of earth. So what they fathered carried both halves. From the father, a spirit that does not die. From the mother, flesh that does. The giants were not a third species. They were two incompatible things held together inside one body, and the body was the only thing holding them together. When the body died, the half that dies died. The half that does not die did not. And that half had nothing to report to. It was not a heavenly spirit, so heaven was not its dwelling. It was not a human soul, so the hollow places in the mountain were not built for it. Imagine a system that was finished before you existed. Heaven has its list, the mountain has its chambers. Every category has a place with its name on it, and there is no line anywhere with your name on it. Nobody crossed you out. Nobody ever wrote you in. That is the answer to the question the hook asked. They were not driven out of anywhere. There was never an address made for them in the first place. Hold that against what happened to their fathers. Azazel was bound hand and foot and thrown into an opening in the desert, covered over with jagged rock and darkness. Semyaza and the rest were bound in the valleys of the earth for 70 generations. Chains, a location, a duration. Their sons received none of the three. Not a lighter sentence, no sentence. The system had no category to sentence them under. So how does something like that exist? Enoch writes one line about it. One line is enough. But before that line lands, look at what these things were while they still had bodies, because the appetite is the part that survived. Enoch describes it escalating, and the order matters. First they ate what men produced. The giants consumed the crops, the harvest, everything human labor could put in front of them. For a while, that worked. Then it stopped working. When men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned on the men. Then birds, then animals, then reptiles, then fish, then each other. The text says they devoured one another's flesh and drank the blood. One point of honesty here, because a lot of channels state this next part as settled fact, and it is not. The manuscripts do not agree on how tall they were. Some copies give a figure in the thousands of cubits, others give a figure 10 times smaller. The scribes were not consistent, and anyone who gives you an exact number is picking one manuscript and not telling you a choice was made. What the manuscripts do agree on is the shape of the appetite. It never found a flaw. Every time it consumed a category completely, it moved to the next one. Now take the bodies away. Here is the line. They take no food, but they still hunger and they still thirst. Think about what that actually describes. Not a spirit that eats invisibly, not a spirit feeding on something we cannot see. A spirit that has kept the entire appetite, the same appetite that ate through crops, then people, then animals, then itself, and has lost the only instrument it ever had for satisfying it. Imagine something moving through the middle of us, indifferent, carrying a hunger that once ate its way through the whole world, with nothing left to lift to its mouth, because there is no mouth left. It is not searching for anything in particular, it simply cannot stop. The mouth is gone, the hunger stayed, and there is no end point built into that. No exhaustion, no point at which the wanting finally spends itself. It was never satisfied when they had bodies, and now the possibility of satisfaction has been removed entirely. That is the condition Enoch is describing. Not imprisonment, not torment administered by anyone. An unfinished want, left running, with nothing left to run through. There is one question left. Why us? And Enoch answers it directly. He describes these spirits attacking, oppressing, and working destruction on the earth, and he specifies the target. They rise against the children of men and against the women. Then he gives the reason in the same breath. Because they came out of them. Read it again, because it carries more than it looks like it does. The watchers were the fathers, but the mothers were human. Human women carried them, human bodies produced them. Whatever else these things were, half of their origin was ordinary human flesh. which means humanity is the closest thing to a home they ever had. They have no dwelling in heaven. Their father's side was forfeited the moment those 200 came down the mountain. They have no place among the human dead. Their mother's side was contaminated by what their fathers did. There is exactly one point in the entire system where they still touch something they came from. And Enoch says that is the thing they attack. Picture one of them standing next to a living person. That person is the only thing in the entire system it ever came out of, the nearest thing to a home it has. And Enoch says that is what it moves toward. Not out of strategy, not because we are weak or convenient. They return to the one origin still standing, the only category that ever produced them, and they tear at it. This is the part that stays with people, and it is worth being precise about why. It is not that something monstrous hunts human beings. Plenty of texts say that. It is that the thing hunting us is, by Enoch's own account, partly made out of us. It came from a human mother, and when it lost everything else, the body, the place, the possibility of ever being satisfied, the one thing left to move toward was the species it was born from. The hunger has no destination, so it goes home. So where is their sentence? The flood was not the end of this. It only removed the part that could die. The ones who gave the order were bound. Chains, a fixed term, a day of judgment already appointed. What they produced received none of it. No chains, no term, no day. Enoch says they destroy without incurring judgment, and that they will go on doing so until the consummation of the age. They were not pardoned. They were left behind,